When I went into labor in March of 2020, the labor and delivery intake nurse was doing COVID screening questions, and she asked me, "Are you experiencing any shortness of breath?" And me, 40 weeks pregnant and in labor, asked her, "How would you like me to answer that question?" Which leads me to the question of why do we get so out of breath while we're pregnant, and what can we do about it? I'm Katie of Body and Motion Pilates, and I'm here to help you have a more comfortable pregnancy, efficient birth, and resilient recovery. So when we get pregnant, get larger and larger and larger, we tend to find that we are starting to run out of breath. Now, there are physiological reasons as to why this is happening, but I'm going to focus on the structural reasons why this is happening. So as the belly increases, what also increases is what's called the infrasternal angle, which is this angle right here that our ribs make. Now, when we breathe, our diaphragm descends, and that causes a 360-degree widening of our rib cage. When the rib cage is already wide from being pregnant, there's not anywhere for the rib cage to go. So you're already like in this inhaled state, and now we're trying to get an even deeper breath, and there's nowhere for it to go. If you are a chest breather, if you knew this before you got pregnant or are noticing it now that you are, that's where you can really start to feel stuck because you're already in this lifted up position, and it's hard for you to then get a deep breath to get more air in there. Another common breathing pattern is a belly breathing. Great for relaxation. There's reasons for it. But when we're pregnant, there's already a lot of pressure in your abdominal cavity. And when we belly breathe and put more pressure into it, it's why do we want to increase pressure when there's already so much going on there already? So really, the best way to breathe when we're pregnant is what's called 360 breathing, or sometimes called lateral thoracic breathing, but that's a mouthful, so 360 is great. So for 360 breathing, what we want to encourage is not only the ribs opening on the breath, but also being able to get into the ribs in the back and breathing into our back muscles. And that is really hard to do when you've got this belly kind of locking down your whole lumbar spine. The weight of it is pulling you forward. So to get into these and to get these to open up, we want to follow our 3 steps that we use for any sort of muscle repatterning. The first thing we want to do is we want to release or reset is another word, release and reset the rib cage. So get these muscles to recognize that they can stretch and they can move. Then we want to realign our rib cage over our abdominal cavity and over our pelvis, because what can happen with pregnancy is either we get super lifted and then we're not stacked anymore, or we get super slid back because the weight goes forward into our hips, and then here we're no longer stacked. So we want to realign and get our rib cage stacked over our pelvic floor, over our pelvis. And then finally, we want to strengthen the auxiliary breathing muscles. So basically any muscle that isn't your diaphragm that's helping you with breath. So all the little muscles that are in between these ribs. So let's get to it. We're going to start by resetting our rib cage muscles and the muscles that support our breathing. And we begin this by laying down on our side. You're going to stack your shoulders and stack your hips. Palms face each other, head comes down. Now, if this is not comfortable for your neck and your shoulder, feel free to place a yoga block or a pillow underneath here to give you a little bit of support. And we're going to start by reaching our top arm past our bottom arm. The shoulders will roll towards the ground. And then when we come back, we pull the top shoulder away and the shoulders roll to face the ceiling. And we just rock back and forth between those positions, finding a breath that coordinates with the movement. What feels good? Does it feel good to exhale as you reach and inhale as you come back? Or maybe a full breath in each direction. And the tricky part here is not letting the hips join in on that movement. Now, if this is feeling good and you want to upgrade, go a little bit more, you're going to make your hip do the opposite of your shoulders. So my top hand and shoulder goes forward, my top hip pulls backwards.
Then I reverse it. My hip slides forward as my shoulder goes back. And the size of this rocking does not matter. What matters is that you spend a little time in your end range, really enjoying it. And again, find that coordination. So as the top shoulder goes forward, the top hip goes back, hip goes forward, arm goes back. So we're stretching out the thoracic spine. We're twisting the thoracic spine so we get some more motion, so the breath has more space to go. Then, of course, you'd roll over onto your back and repeat on the other side. To help realign our rib cage over our pelvis, we're going to use a wall to help us. So stand about a foot length to 2 foot lengths away from the wall so you can get your whole spine against there. Now, there's 2 common pregnancy postures that can arise from you being on the wall. The first one is in an attempt to not slouch. I'm going to lift this arm so you can see my rib cage. We lift our chest and then we don't feel any rib cage touching this wall at all. So that's when we're standing kind of like this so that we're not slouched, which is again the other habit. So we're either back or lifted, and the wall is going to tell you where you are. Do you feel a big gap here in your back where it's hard to make that connection to the wall? Or do you feel your neck jutting forward and not feel a lot of upper back touching the wall? And actually, it's a result of the same muscles being tight. It's just where we've chosen to align our bones to kind of hide it. So the wall is going to tell you kind of where you are. And without forcing your bones to be in touch with the wall, you're just going to take a couple deep breaths and relax your body back and into the wall. We can do this laying down too if you're still tolerating being on your back for long periods of time. But again, the wall is always there for you. So just notice, have your back bottom ribs, bra line area, lifted up away. What can you do to relax to come back? If relaxing or forcing then causes the shoulders to come up and the neck to jut forward, we've gone a little too far. We've forced it. You can hear how my voice changes too. We want to find that happy medium where we're trying to reach back as much rib as possible and reach open as much shoulder as possible. And then from here, we're going to do some snow angels, but we're standing against a wall. So the arms start to lift up and then lower down. And you can make them progressively larger. I like to take a count of 8 to gradually grow my wall angel. I'm running out of room here over by the door. And you'll start to notice that there's probably a spot where either it hurts to get your arm up higher or your arm tries to pop up off the wall, usually about shoulder height. We want to feel the armpit go from facing the floor to facing in front of us. So to go from facing the floor to coming around and facing in front of us. If we don't let that happen, the shoulder starts to rise and we get stuck. So what we're doing here with these wall angels is we're stretching out the front of the chest, which then allows the rib cage to find better alignment over the pelvis. Also, by stretching out the pecs, we now have a stretchy muscle for our breath to go into. So wall angels to help you find that vertical posture, to start stretching out the front of the chest and to start working the muscles in the back. Feel free to add weights to this once you've figured out your alignment without the weights. Our last step is to reload our auxiliary breathing muscles, so everything but our diaphragm. As I said, back on the wall, you could add weights to your wall angels. That's going to start reloading the pattern. But my favorite way to do this and to really discover what the 360 breath is to use a TheraBand. So I'm going to take this TheraBand right around my bra line, right underneath the chest, and cross it. And I'm giving just a little bit of tension so I can sense that TheraBand circling my rib cage. And actually, this is a great place to start, to do this first, then do the rocking, then do the wall angels, and then come back to this and see how it feels different. So it's a little tight, just so I can have that little bit of stretch. And the thought process is when I inhale, my ribs should open 360 degrees like an umbrella. And I feel
the band stretch. I feel my hands get a little closer together. And then as I exhale, the band relaxes, the hands are able to pull apart. So giving your muscles in your ribs a little bit of resistance, something to push against, you can notice, am I mostly breathing side to side, or can I get some of my air into my back? Not by moving my rib cage, but from the inside out, by inflating in and out. And when we exhale, I really want you to think of this exhale being a lift. Even though the ribs are coming down, when you exhale, all of your soft tissue is actually coming up in response to kind of the vacuum that's been created by your diaphragm moving out of the way. So we take a big inhale, exhale, feel the lift. And do a couple of those until you get a little lightheaded sometimes from a rush of oxygen, or you can really start to sense that you're able to put your air not only again in that side to side, but in the back as well. So hopefully these tips helped you feel a little less short of breath going up the stairs during your pregnancy. And I bet you're looking forward to taking that first deep postpartum breath again.